Hey there, are you grieving the potential loss of a loved one or feeling overwhelmed with the loss of someone you care about? If so, you're in the right place. Lisa Hartung here, and this podcast is designed to guide you through topics surrounding death and dying. We'll dive into multifaceted aspects of grief, offering you a blend of personal stories, expert insights, and practical advice for your grief journey. May this be a safe space for you to learn, listen, and ask questions about your own life and loved ones. So grab your favorite beverage and let's dive in. Hey everyone, sending big hugs to you this Father's Day. This is a day that can be fraught with really tough emotions for many, of love, of longing, of loss, of what could have been. And whether you've lost your dad in the last year or you lost him decades ago, know that you're not alone. And I'm holding space in my heart for you. You don't have to grieve in silence. We can walk this road together. So know that I'm here for you. I'm sending hugs. And I hope that this week's episode really sheds light on how we can take something that's really, really hard, celebrate the story and the life of our loved one, and find new ways and new meaning in our lives. So without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast. Today, we're joined by Jessie Hansen. She's an artist, a writer, a storyteller. Her journey is one of resilience, transformation, healing, and Jessie's experience ranged from a challenging childhood shaped by her father's struggles with alcoholism to her journey through grief and self-discovery after his passing. And it's really given her a new perspective on life. So through meditation, creative expression, and her decision to quit drinking, Jessie has really made a transformation. So she's embraced a path of empowerment and personal growth. And she's here with us today to share her inspiring story about navigating life's challenges and finding meaning in life after loss. So without further ado, thank you so much, Jessie, for joining us. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you so much for having me. I'm great. I'm really excited to share my story today, and I feel like it's quite a journey, but I'm just so looking forward to sharing it and hopefully helping others feel like they're not alone.
Yeah, that's something that's really unique about this podcast is it's wherever you are on your grief journey, you're welcome. And so I know your father passed a number of years ago, but would love to just maybe we start with diving in there and you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with your dad and then what it was like losing him.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up with my mom, dad, sister, and my dad was an alcoholic. So he was present, but he was not present in my childhood. He had one of the biggest hearts. He was so loving, but he just, had the disease of alcoholism. And so as a child, I really struggled with that and kind of understanding like what love was with the inconsistency of it. And so my parents divorced when I was about 11. At that time, my dad moved out. Going from living with a full-time alcoholic every day to not coming home to that
Mm.
was a huge relief for me. I finally felt like I didn't have to just be on eggshells all the time. It was really freeing. But then my dad moved to Idaho, and so we didn't get to see him very often, probably just a couple times a year. He would come down, we would visit. Our relationship, the older I got better. So I I found out when I was in my like early teen years that he wasn't actually my biological father. And that was really hard because I really wanted him to be my dad. Like he raised me and I loved him so much. So that kind of threw a wrench in my life. My teenage years, I started drinking. I first started when I was 14.
Mm.
And then I just started partying like every weekend with friends. The older I got, I just continued consistently drinking. I would say probably the last 10 years of my dad's life, he had cut way back on his drinking. I actually had two kids and he was in their life. We had a really great relationship. He was still in Idaho, so I wasn't around him a lot, but it was a couple years before he passed, he got cancer. He was a smoker all his life, drinker, smoker. I remember one day, it was Christmas or Christmas Eve. He was down staying with us for the holidays and his nose was blue. He was really cold and we're like, okay, we need to go to the hospital. Like something's wrong. And he was really thin. He had lost weight, but his weight fluctuated. And so we were like, okay, well, something's wrong. So we go to the hospital and they told us the news that he had an obstruction in his lung and it was cancer.
Mm.
And so we were shocked. He was always like really an anxious person. So he had a lot of anxiety. And I remember just sitting in the hospital room with him, and it was just me and him. It kind of brought me back to like my childhood because my childhood, the time I did spend with him, like we would watch TV shows together. And that I really loved that, like that. And it was usually in the morning when he was sober. And so that was like the best times.
Yeah.
So being in the hospital with him, like we watched the same shows, like he liked crime shows, crime scene shows, and like sci-fi shows. So it just kind of brought me back to that. And I was really thankful for that time. And we didn't really even talk. We just sat there and watched shows together. Um, it was so hard because I was feeling so much inside and he was feeling so much inside, and we didn't say anything. We just sat there in silence. And so I could feel like I was afraid, he was afraid. And I wish I would have said something. I wish I would have, but I just wanted to be strong for him and not, show that I was so afraid at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up going through chemo radiation and he beat it. It was all gone, got rid of all the cancer. We were so happy. Like, I feel like in my mind, I just knew he was going to beat it. But he was still so worried that it was going to come back. He just lived with that constant anxiety.
Oh.
And so a couple years later, he was back up in Idaho. I remember when I got the call, it was Mother's Day.
Mm.
And I had been drinking all day. I had passed out. I remember I sat up, they woke me up, and it was my husband at the time and his mom and dad. They were all sitting around me. I knew that something was wrong. And I was like, what's wrong? They were like, your dad has been in a car accident and they don't think he's going to make it. I was just like, overwhelmed with shock, I guess. I just immediately started bawling and I was just like, okay, well, we have to go up there. We have to go now, because he's in Idaho, we're in Oregon. Like, we have to go.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, your brother and your aunt are going up there. We can meet them. You can get with them and go. And I'm like, okay. So I get in the car and we start the drive. It's an 8-hour drive. And he's in the hospital with one of my aunts, one of his sisters who lives there as well. And on the way up there, I remember it was probably a couple hours into the drive, and my aunt that was with him called and she said, it's time to say goodbye. He's going to go. You want to say goodbye to him? And I was like, yeah, but I don't know what to say, I wasn't prepared for that. How do I say goodbye to somebody over the phone?
Mm.
And it's my dad. I didn't have any words to say. I just said, I love you. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you. And goodbye. That was really hard because I didn't get a goodbye back and I didn't get any words back.
Because he was unable to speak.
Yeah, he was unconscious. They had tried revive. They had to shock him back several times, but he was in a lot of pain.
Oh.
Um, he was in a single vehicle accident. He hit a tree and he had been drinking and driving.
Mm.
And so he had gone through the windshield and had to be life flighted to the hospital.
Wow.
Yeah, I said goodbye and we just kept driving. It was like we're still driving and I'm like, what are we gonna do? Like what are we gonna do when we get there?
Right.
And then we got there. My sister had to fly in from Louisiana. She was on vacation and she was the one who had the medical power of attorney. So she had to make the decision to like turn off life support.
Mm.
And I just felt so bad because I was drunk at the time. She was trying to get a hold of me and couldn't. They were asking her to make all these decisions, and I just wasn't available. That was really hard afterwards. So, yeah, we ended up getting his things and we all, took care of everything when we were up there and went to the funeral home and did all of that.
Oh my
But
God.
I just remember being so like in a fog and just like I can't make any decisions. And it was me and my sister and older brother, and my older brother is probably like 10 years older than us. So he was just like making all the decisions and doing everything. And I was just so thankful for that because I was not in a state where I could do that.
Hmm. And at this
So,
point, how old were you when he passed?
29.
Mm. And you had
Yeah.
kids of your own.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're up there and you thought you were just going to see him after his accident. And then
Hmm.
after he'd had this whole bout of cancer, and you're like, oh, yay, he's
Yeah.
survived. You get that glimmer of hope. And then it's almost like blindsided, right? And
Yeah.
when you say that you were in a fog, was it from drinking or was it from grief, like overwhelm, or maybe a little bit of both?
I think it was grief. I think it was shock
Yeah.
because it was just like, we're here, but he's not here. And every time we're up here, he's here. This is why we come here.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just didn't know. I just felt lost. What do we do now? And the day after
Mm.
all of that, we went to his vehicle at the wrecking yard.
Mhm.
And my aunt was like, well, you guys don't want to see that. But like my sister and I, we wanted to see it. We didn't want to see him after the accident, but we wanted to see the vehicle because for me personally, I felt like I wanted to find any type of clues or any type of things that I could salvage that were his in his vehicle that I could feel closer to him, like at that time.
Yeah.
And so we went to the vehicle and it was a mess. There was stuff all over and we found his glasses that he was wearing and his cowboy hat that he wore every day. They had blood on them, and it was really hard to find them, but also kind of like comforting in a weird way because he had just been there. He had just been in there. And I don't know, we found a pack of cigarettes, which he had quit smoking after the cancer. So we didn't know he was smoking again. And then we'd found alcohol bottles. I think we spent a good couple hours there just like going through everything. Like, what can we find? Anything meaningful or like anything to know more about what he was feeling before the accident.
Mm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Try to trace it back and say, what happened on this day.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. What a tough time for any family member, but also just hard as a mom and, losing your dad after, thinking that he would be okay. In the aftermath of his passing, how did you deal with the grief?
Yeah, so since I had, been drinking since my teenage years, and that was really how I coped with everything.
Mm.
I didn't really learn coping skills when I was young,
Mhm.
so that had become my coping skill for everything. I just dove right into that. So I started drinking a lot. Right after my dad's passing and we got back, I took a week off of work and I don't think I got out of bed one time. I wasn't really drinking that first week, but I remember just like waking up every morning. And it's like every morning you wake up, it's like they die all over again
Yep.
because it's the realization. And so every morning I would just be like massive anxiety and
Mm.
just like feel like I was dying.
Oh,
And I remember telling my husband at the time, like, I feel like there's this like anxiety and this like weight on my chest that I just can't get off and I can't calm down. I can't calm down and I just can't I feel like I'm gonna die.
like
And
fight or flight.
yes, yeah. And I don't even remember what he said, like just try and relax or something. And I was just like, oh my God, no, that's not, I can't. And so I started drinking a lot, and that was not good. I started drinking a lot and my body started hurting. I went to the doctor because I didn't know what else to do. The doctor was like, "Well, we can run some tests and stuff, and I could give you like some anxiety medicine to help you sleep, but you can't drink if you take it. And uh, I recommend that you see like the counselor that's in the office, like the behavioral counselor." And I was like, "Okay, sure, why not? I have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
I need help." So I went in to see the counselor, and it was a 30-minute appointment, so it was really short
Hmm.
and it was really expensive. I just broke down. And I feel like at that time in my life, I was just breaking down everywhere. Like I would just be at the grocery store and start crying. I remember the counselor said to me, you're not alone in this. There's a lot of people that are going through this. Like that was shocking to me. It made me kind of mad because I was like,
This is my.
if there's yeah, if there's a lot of people that are going through this, why is nobody talking about it?
Hmm.
Because I am suffering. I'm having the hardest time I've ever had in my life, and nobody talks about it. And then every time I see people, all they say is, "I'm so sorry for you." And, "Oh, must be so hard to lose your dad at such a young age." And I'm just like, "Yeah, I'm sorry for myself too." And that just makes me even more sad. It's
Yeah.
just like,
Like what
it's
not?
not helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was mad and I was just crying and upset. And, she told me, well, the best thing you could do is to just try and be mindful. Like, have you ever tried yoga or meditation? And I was mad at that too. I was like, are you kidding me? I spent like $250 for you to tell me to do yoga and meditation.
Yeah.
Like, I'm dying here, lady. Come on. Like something better, more profound. That's what everybody says. And so then I left and I felt so discouraged. I felt just like that wasn't helpful at all,
Like,
Like
meet me where I
I was,
am.
yeah, I was mad, I was discouraged, but I still had all this grief that I had to deal with.
Absolutely.
And drinking wasn't helping.
Hmm.
And it was making it way worse, just throwing gas on the fire.
Mm.
So I was like, well, maybe I'll just download a meditation app and try to do a meditation because I am all out of ideas and I don't know what else to do. I downloaded the meditation app. I did my first guided meditation, and it was like waves, like ocean waves.
Mm.
And I remember it was the very first one I did. It was a profound experience. I was standing on the beach. I saw myself as a child, like 5 years old, and I like connected with my younger self and just felt what it was like. I was like, I was back there. And I was like, oh my God, like this. Okay, I'm meditating every day.
Goosebumps.
I was just like, this is meditation. I didn't know this was meditation. I thought it was just like sit here and don't think of anything, like,
Yeah.
and I obviously can't do that because look at where I'm at, where I'm at right now. So I started meditating every single day.
Wow.
And that was so helpful in like reducing my anxiety and just coping in general and not feeling like I was just, so stressed out all the time. And I remember, so the day we went up to Idaho to spread my dad's ashes, this was
Mm.
a few months after he had passed. We spread his ashes and I drank that morning. And we go up there. We are at the top of this property that our family owns. There's this big hill, and you look out and you can see for like miles and miles in every direction. And my dad loved that spot. It was his favorite spot, and he had wanted to build a cabin on that property. We went up there and we spread his ashes, me and my sister and my oldest son. I remember it was like the most beautiful experience. I felt like he was there, like the wind was blowing. It was like magical. And I was crying. And as tears were streaming down my face, I realized, like I knew in my heart that was the last day I was going to drink. I was never going to drink after that.
Wow.
Yeah. And then so I had drank one beer that morning,
Hmm.
and I have not drank since then.
Wow.
And it was hard at first
Hmm.
because we had to go to another celebration of life in Oregon for my dad. And when we went to the second one, I was like, why did we do two? Like, it's hard enough to do one.
Hmm.
Now I have to go to another one, and it's like all over again.
Hmm.
And this time I'm not drinking.
Hmm.
And so that was really hard. And since my dad was a drinker, a lot of his friends were a drinker. We had a keg at
Oh.
his second service. I remember like talking to my dad that morning, being like, Dad, I don't want to do this today. I don't want to go. I'm only going because I have to go. This is the hardest thing. And okay, muster up all of the courage that I have, go and just get through it. And I got through it and I was really anxious because I couldn't drink. And there were so many times I wanted to just go over there and get a drink. Everybody would have understood.
Hmm.
Nobody would have cared. Nobody knew that I had told myself I was quitting. I was like, no, I know that I can't because once I start, I can't stop.
Hmm.
And so if I don't start, I won't have that problem. I did it. And I was like, if I can do that, like I can just do every day, I just one day at a time.
One day at a time.
And then, yeah, so that really began like my journey
Mm.
to sobriety.
So is there like a mantra that I could only imagine, like this is the hardest, right? You're going through this huge life change, and then your previous coping mechanism is not available. And so
Mhm.
were you channeling like your meditative mind in that moment? Was there like a mantra that you were saying to yourself to help refrain from drinking?
No, honestly, I was just reminding myself how bad I felt
Mm.
when I drank.
Hmm.
Because like I had gotten to the point where like I was having stomach problems and like I got an ulcer. I just didn't feel good. I didn't feel good and I knew if I kept going, like it was just gonna be downhill really fast, really quick.
Mm.
So I was just like, and the amount of anxiety I was getting from drinking because of all of the grief. So
Yeah.
it's like I was just, when I was drinking, I would forget about it and then I would wake up with even more anxiety.
Oh my gosh.
And so it just added so much extra. So just that
That's
really uncomfortable feeling, I would just remind myself of that and just like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want that again. And not to mention, like, just the person that I had become,
Mhm.
so unaligned with my own personal values and the things that I was doing and decisions I were making. I was regretting all of them and just having a lot of shame about them. And so I was like, I don't want to be this person and I don't have to be this person. So just really reminding myself of the physical and emotional toll that it was taking on me. like was enough for me to just, okay, no. But it was one day at a time for sure at the beginning.
Jesse, that's just so incredible that you were able, in your moment of grief and such pain and suffering, to make that decision to say, nope, I'm going to change. I'm going to rewrite this story. And you have such a story of transformation. So tell us kind of what came next.
Yeah, so since I wasn't drinking, I had to figure out how to cope with all of this like immense grief that I had. And not only was it this grief from losing my dad, but it was this mountain of feelings that I had repressed from my childhood and all of the feelings that I had been piling on top of that from actions I had taken while drinking and decisions
Mhm.
I made that I was, brought me so much guilt, like the hardest feelings, guilt, shame, regret, those like really gross feelings. I had amassed such a mountain of feelings and I didn't know what to do with it. And I couldn't afford to go to counseling. So I was like, okay, well, I can't drink. I need to do something. So I've always been a writer. Ever since I was little, I would write like stories, and I really love writing poetry. So I had gotten totally out of that when I started drinking. When I started drinking, it became all about drinking. I had lost touch with who I really was as a person. And so like they say when you get sober, like, what did you do as a hobby when you were little? Like, try and reconnect with like the things that you did when you were younger.
Mm.
And I was like, well, what did I do when I was younger? And I was like, okay, I wrote stories. I was always doing creative things. Like, I'm very creative and I love like crafts and art and all of that. So I was like, what can I do? I started writing first, and I said, okay, I just want to start writing through all of these feelings because I have so many, and I feel like when I write about them, it brings me back to them. It
Mhm.
brings me back to the feelings, it brings the feelings back up. And then when I feel them, I can work my way through them. And also, now that I'm older, yeah, I can like recognize what they were, like that maybe when I was younger, I couldn't have. So I started writing about hard or painful moments from my childhood. That was hard. Every time I was writing, I was crying. I was just crying like the whole time I was writing. But it felt good. It
Mhm.
felt good to write about it, to release it. Yeah, I felt like I was giving, in a way, I was honoring those feelings, like seeing them when I never wanted to see them. I wanted to ignore them. And so I really was able to work through a lot of those feelings. And then I also wrote about current things that I was going through. So I was at the time going through a divorce, and that was also hard. That was shortly after my dad's passing. Just writing through all of these hard times. But then I got to the point of good times as well. So it wasn't all bad, but just writing really helped me to process the emotions I was feeling, how I felt as a child, and those emotions weren't ever felt then, nor were they seen or heard from like my parents.
Wow.
So it felt really good to just get that out. And so I started writing and just stockpiling all of these memories and everything that I had written. During that same time, I was wanting to find something that I could do creatively that would be more like arts and crafts, more like creative expression.
Oh,
So I decided, well, maybe I'll start painting, and I had never painted when I was young, but I was like, I want to try painting. And
why not?
I had actually just read the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And that book was crazy to me because it like really changed my mindset about doing creative work and doing it for the sake of doing it and the sake of enjoying it instead of like it has to be perfect, has to be polished. Don't do it unless it's perfect. Don't share it with anyone unless it's perfect. So I decided, okay, I'm going to buy a canvas, I'm going to buy some paint, and every Sunday, I'm going to paint for 1 hour. And that's going to be my time because I didn't have any time for myself. And
Hmm.
I realized that when I got sober, it was just about me. I didn't care about myself. I don't know how to take care of myself. So I'm going to try and make this 1 hour a week for me. And this is my time. And tell my family, don't bother me. It's my time. So I started painting. And I remember the first day that I painted, and I actually bought a gallery wrapped canvas with like the thicker, edges because I
Uh-huh.
was like, this is going to be a masterpiece. Like, and, I'm going into it. Like, I'm diving in. There's no practice. I'm just doing it. So I started painting and I painted based on how I felt. So I was like, whatever I felt like, I would paint. And so it was like abstract painting. But I was like, I feel like blue, I feel like red, I feel like purple, and I feel like, doing this kind of a brush stroke, or I feel like more energy and movement, and really just like felt so free, just like whatever came out, came out. And I would just listen to music in my headphones and just paint however I felt. It was so freeing to me. And the thing that I loved about it the most, because I had always been like a perfectionist growing up and like people pleaser. And, the thing I loved about it the most was that you can't make any mistakes in painting. If you don't like it, you just paint over it.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've never done this. So yeah, that was huge. And then it just blew up from there. I was buying canvases and paints all the time. I got this huge bundle from someone who was selling a bunch of stuff. And then I had my paints and everything set up in my dining room, and
Mm.
it was just painting all the time. And
Wow.
I just loved it. So that and writing and meditation
Mhm.
really helped me to get back to myself and to connect with like who I am, what I love, what I have been missing out on because I was just in that fog of drinking for so long
Yeah.
and I had just gotten so out of touch with like who I was. So that really brought me back to it. And then I actually ended up combining all of my writing into a book and I self-published it.
Mm.
So it's called Love Me by Jessie Yerke. So it's my maiden name, maiden last name. I self-published it because I didn't write it for any kind of recognition or anything. The whole reason that I wrote it was to process my feelings and
Mm.
share my journey in one spot.
Mm.
And so I wanted to self-publish it because I wanted to help one person. I was like, if by sharing this will help one person, then my job here is done.
Yeah.
And so I self-published it and I shared it on like my social media and stuff. And I think I sold just over like 100 copies of it.
I mean, that's a
And
lot.
right, yeah.
The first
And
book.
yeah, and I was so excited. And I got so many messages from that. Like so much good feedback. So many people reached out to me and were just like, this is my story.
Right.
Like I can't believe like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing this because now I feel like I'm not totally alone in this world. It just has made such a big difference and it makes me want to share my story now. And I was just like, oh my God, goosebumps. I was just like, okay, okay, I accomplished my goal.
I kept stepping into my purpose here. This is,
Right, yeah.
how
So yeah, it just
beautiful.
felt amazing.
So you self-published a book. You're painting. Do you ever sell your paintings or show them to anyone?
Yes, so I actually opened an art studio in the small town that I grew up in a couple years ago. I opened in the summer and I wasn't sure if I really wanted to do it like long term. So I was like, well, I'll just try it out and I'll see if I like it. Because I feel like along my journey, I'm just trying to find, like, I know I'm creative. I know I am a storyteller. I know I have all of this, but I just don't know how I'm supposed to use it, you know?
Mm.
And so I asked for sign. I'm like, okay, if I should open this art studio, and I always ask for my signs like in my head, because your phone you can hear you. I don't want my phone to pop up my signs and then it's not real. So I asked for a sign. I'm like, okay, show me an orange butterfly if I should open my own art studio. And later that day, I was like wondering, what should I call it, And then I was looking up the town that I grew up in. It's called Vernonia. So I
Mhm.
was thinking like maybe I could call it like Vernonia Variety because I was going to sell more than just my paintings. I Googled Vernonia Variety, and the first thing that popped up is orange butterflies because it was like a type of butterfly or something. And I was like, no way.
That's
I
so
was like, oh
sweet.
my gosh. Okay, well, now I have to start it?
Yeah, like that's not a sign. I don't know.
Yeah. So I ended up calling it just Jessie Marie Art Studio because I wanted to focus primarily on just selling my art.
Yes.
I do graphic design and I do painting. And
Mhm.
so I created like Vernonia specific merchandise that I would sell that I did that utilized like my graphic design. And then I also sold my paintings. And I loved like talking to the people that came in. Like, I quickly realized that I hate selling retail stuff. Like, I hate working in retail. I hate having that type of a business. I don't want to do any of that. All I want to do is talk to the people that come in. And so they would come in, and a lot of them were artists themselves. And they would come in, and I would see their eyes light up when they would see my paintings, and they would all be like, "These are your paintings?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh my gosh." It was like they were just blown away that like I could put my paintings in this space and like put them up for sale. I would ask them like, "Oh, are you an artist?" And they were like, "Yeah." But I would never be like I would never have the courage to like share my work. And it was like that was like the most common conversation I had. I was like, "Oh my gosh, no, you need to share your work. Like it's your obligation to share your work. Only you are the only person who has this perspective on life, and there's people out there waiting to buy your work. But if you don't share it, they can't find it. You need to share it. Everybody has different tastes. Some people come in and hate my paintings. Some people come in and like, oh my God, I need that? Like it's just part of it. It was such a great experience in that I loved encouraging other people and talking with other people and hearing their stories. I think that's why I am where I am today and I don't still have my art studio.
Mm. I'm thinking like, okay, she's going to be an art dealer, like helping people tell their stories, share their artwork. But you've also started a podcast recently. So maybe you could tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that. It's kind of like an iteration from your retail space. Now you're taking it back and doing behind the scenes a little bit. So tell us.
Yes. Yeah, so I just started this podcast called Journey to Your Dreams with my longtime best friend, Miranda. We grew up together, so we've known each other since we were 5 and 6. We both have gone through these life journeys, of losing a parent and different types of journeys, but same feeling of feeling so alone in the struggles that we face. We wanted to start the podcast because we wanted to share our stories so that people know they're not alone. We both felt really called to like use our voice. She growing up wanted to be a singer. I growing up used to make like my own, I'd have my own talk show and like I just love, talking and I was a teacher as well, in my pretend play. I feel like it just kind of called to us. And in a time where I'm like, I'm ready to step into the next version of myself. I so long was held back by like childhood patterns that I was repeating
Mhm.
and like having some breakthroughs in those. I just felt ready, like so ready and called to like this next step. And through the podcast, like we're able to tell our stories and our struggles, but we're also bringing on so many incredible guests to tell their stories and their journeys, like through healing to success. anything that they've had that's profoundly affected them or changed the way that they see life or go through life.
Mhm.
And so I feel like through the podcast, we're going to be able to reach so many people in a different format than like my book would because it's a different audience.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just feel so excited for this next step and this next journey, stepping into this next version of myself.
Yeah, Jessie, you have so many talents, right? And you're so good at each of them. And so it's like, how do you pick which one, right? But I love how, in talking with you, I feel like in Shrek, they give the ogres are like onions and you peel back the layers. And I think that, when you're going through grief and childhood trauma or hardship, and then you're peeling back the layers and you're finding this pure being on the inside, and now you're projecting that light out into the world, which is just so incredible. You're stepping into that, and that can be really scary at times. And I think that fear holds a lot of people back from fully experiencing life or fully expressing themselves. And I think around, the grief conversation, there's so much that people don't say. So thank you for putting your story out there and for sharing it. Especially, I think that when coping through grief, substance is something that is an easier crutch, right, to run to.
Yes.
And so, what advice might you give to someone who's either, in the addiction space or in the grief space, or perhaps in both, dealing and processing with both? You've had such an incredible transformation. Life doesn't always have to be like it was, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, I would say one thing that I really learned after my dad's passing was that you have to give yourself grace,
mhm.
which is like the whole point of your podcast. I didn't realize that it was okay to not get up and do the dishes, that it
Mm.
was okay to relax, that it was okay to not do things if you don't have the capacity. Really just giving yourself grace and giving yourself permission to not be okay for a little while
Yes.
because everything is temporary. And like the same with addiction, it's going to be hard at first because you're learning a new lifestyle. It's a whole new lifestyle and you're learning how to cope. It's a process, but it can be a beautiful process because it's like a journey. You take one step at a time and you take one moment at a time and however you need to get through it, you get through it, but don't give up on yourself. Like, put yourself first, make your self-care the most important, and then that will just overflow into everything else around you.
Putting yourself first, especially as women and as moms, like we're always caregiving for others and we're
Yes.
giving, giving, giving. It's great to hear and like keep telling ourselves that self-care is so important. And especially
Yes.
when you're going through grief, giving space for that is just so fruitful. And as you can see from Jessie, that meditation helped. And then you started an art studio and you wrote a podcast. So, there's so much to life, and investing in yourself and your own well-being is really what's important in this. And it also helps with the grief journey, right? How would you say your grief has changed as you have been moving through these different chapters of your life?
Yeah, I feel like I have gotten so much stronger.
Mhm.
Like I feel like the saying that, um, it doesn't get better, you get stronger is true. I feel like it's like grief can be challenging at any time because you never have like that person's never coming back.
Mm.
But I feel like I get stronger and I didn't used to believe in myself. I didn't used to have the self-confidence, but through the healing and the self-care that I really dove into, I was able to build my self-confidence and just really believe in myself. And I feel like that's huge because if, you know, you don't have that growing up, and then you have to kind of give that to yourself. Like
To learn it almost.
it, yeah, yeah. But it also really helped because I had a lot of people along the way who believed in me.
Mm,
So it was, friends and bosses and stuff. So surrounding myself with people who were going to lift me up and encourage me and always see like who I am,
yeah.
even when I don't.
Yeah. And I think that community, that's another key piece to moving through grief in different stages is leaning on the community and the different resources that are available. And sometimes it's so hard to even know what those are, right? Like as you said,
Right.
you were like, all I know is alcohol. So then I went to this, therapist and they told me to meditate, right? It's like, well, but it doesn't hurt to try, as you're
Yes.
moving through to trying all of these different things. So, oh my goodness. Well, Jessie, thank you so much for your time with us today. I feel so blessed to hear your story. It really gripped my heart hearing about your journey with your dad, but it's so, again, it's like you're that butterfly that's really born out
Yeah.
of darkness and you're spreading your wings and you're flying and it's this is a podcast, but um, for those of us who are watching it, it's so great to see your smile and see kind of the lightness that you carry with your new self and feeling that renewed sense of purpose. So I'm so grateful for your time. I wish you the best. We will make sure to link your book, which is Love Me, self-published. You can find it on Amazon. And then also link your Journey to Your Dreams podcast. So our listeners can also find resources and your strengths as well. So thank you again. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you so much for having me. It's been fantastic.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Giving Grief Grace. If you found the content interesting and think it could help a friend or a loved one, please share it with them. Subscribe to this podcast and get a weekly dose of positivity. And while you're at it, please leave a review. If you enjoyed the show and want to support me financially on my grief journey, I'm raising funds for Project Purple, a nonprofit whose mission is to see a world without pancreatic cancer. I'm doing this by running the New York City Marathon in November 2025, and I'll leave a link to my fundraising page in the show notes. If you've lost a loved one and are looking for support in an online community, consider joining our free private Facebook group, Giving Grief Grace. May you be kind to yourself in the week ahead and give yourself grace. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.